Hello, my amazing students, and welcome again to your channel. My name is Clara, and today, I don't just want to talk about English as a language. I want to talk about what English can do to your life. Because many people think learning English is only about vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation. But it's much deeper than that. English can change the way you think, the people you meet, the opportunities you see, the confidence you feel, and even the future you create for yourself. Now, maybe right now, you're learning slowly. Maybe you still struggle when speaking. Maybe sometimes you feel tired or discouraged. But what if I told you that this small daily effort could open doors you can't even see yet? That's what we're going to explore today. Not in a fake motivational way, but in a real way, a human way. Because sometimes one skill really can change everything. There's something interesting about English. Most people only see the surface of it. Words, grammar, videos, exercises. But they don't see what's hidden behind it. Access. Because English is not just a school subject anymore. It's a door. And depending on whether you open that door or not, your future can look completely different. Now let me explain something honestly. A lot of people learn English for the wrong reason at first. They learn it because they should. For school, for exams, for work. And because of that, learning feels heavy, like obligation. But the moment you realize what English actually gives you, everything changes. Because suddenly, it's not just language anymore, it's freedom. Now think about this for a second. Imagine two people living in the same city, same age, same background, same intelligence. But one of them speaks English confidently, and the other doesn't. After a few years, their lives may look completely different. Not because one person was smarter, but because one person had access to more opportunities, more information, more connections, more confidence. And that changes everything. Now, here's something very real. Most of the internet is in English. Books, courses, podcasts, interviews, business ideas, opportunities. Some of the most valuable knowledge in the world becomes instantly available when you understand English. And people often underestimate how powerful that is. Because access changes thinking, and thinking changes life. Now let's go deeper. English also changes the way you see yourself. At the beginning, you might feel limited. You depend on translations. You avoid speaking. You stay inside a small comfort zone. But as your English grows, your world grows with it. You start understanding people from different countries. You start watching content without subtitles. You start expressing ideas directly. And slowly, something changes inside you. You feel more capable, more connected, more independent. That transformation is powerful. Now here's something most people never talk about. Learning English also changes your confidence outside of language. Because every time you speak, even when you feel nervous, you prove something to yourself. You prove that you can grow, that you can adapt, that you can become someone new. And that mindset affects everything else in your life. Now imagine this. A person who was once afraid to say one sentence in English, later speaking in meetings, traveling confidently, making international friends, building a business online, teaching, creating content, working remotely, all because they continued learning one small step at a time. That's not unrealistic anymore. That's the world we live in now. English is connected to opportunity more than ever before. Now, let's be honest. Will English magically change your life overnight? No, of course not. But it can slowly change your direction. And direction matters more than speed because small daily improvements compound. A new word today, a sentence tomorrow, a conversation next month, and after some time, you realize you're no longer the same person. Now here's something important. The people who benefit most from English are not always the most talented learners. They're the most consistent ones, the ones who continue, even when progress feels slow, the ones who stay connected to the language, because fluency is not built in one moment. It's built through repetition over time, and repetition creates transformation. Now let's connect this to your future. Imagine yourself a few years from now. You understand English naturally. You speak more confidently. You can learn from people all over the world. You can apply for opportunities that once felt impossible. That future starts with something very small. Not talent, not perfection, just continuation. Now here's the deeper truth. Learning English is not only about becoming fluent. It's about expanding your possibilities. Because every new skill creates new paths, and English creates many of them. Sometimes paths you don't even know exist yet. That's why this journey matters, even when it feels slow, even when it feels difficult. Because one day, you may look back and realize, learning English didn't just teach you a language, it changed the entire direction of your life. Let's talk about opportunities. Not the fake motivational kind, real opportunities, the kind that quietly change people's lives. Because here's something many learners don't realize at the beginning. English does not only help you communicate, it changes what becomes available to you. And sometimes, you don't even notice it happening. Now think about this. Before learning English, your world is often limited to what exists around you, the information in your language, the jobs in your environment, the people near you. But the moment you understand English, your world expands beyond your location. And in today's world, that matters a lot, because opportunities are no longer only local, they're global. Now let me give you something very real. Imagine someone who learns English well enough to communicate confidently online. That person can suddenly work remotely, study from international courses, meet people from different countries, travel more comfortably, create content for a global audience, apply for international opportunities. And none of that requires perfect English. That's important. Many people wait too long because they think, I need to sound perfect first. No, you need communication more than perfection. Now here's something deeper. English also gives you access to speed. What do I mean by that? Information arrives in English first most of the time. New ideas, technology, business trends, scientific discussions, personal development content. And when you understand English, you access those ideas directly, without waiting for translation, without depending on someone else to explain them to you. That independence is powerful. Now let's go deeper again. English changes the people you can connect with, and people shape your future more than most things. Think about it. One conversation can create a friendship, a business idea, a new opportunity, a different perspective, a completely new direction in life. But communication creates those possibilities, and English multiplies communication. Now here's something very interesting psychologically. The more access you have, the bigger your thinking becomes, because your brain starts realizing, there's more out there than I thought. And that changes ambition, confidence, vision. Now imagine someone who only consumes local information, compared to someone who can access ideas from all over the world. Over time, their mindset becomes very different because exposure changes thinking, and thinking changes behavior. Now let's make this personal. Maybe right now, you think learning English is just a skill, something useful, something practical. But later, you may realize it became much more than that. Maybe it helps you meet someone important. Maybe it helps you find work online. Maybe it helps you build confidence. Maybe it leads you toward opportunities you can't predict today. That's the interesting part. English often changes lives indirectly, not through one dramatic moment, but through many small doors opening over time. Now here's something most people ignore. Every time you improve your English, even a little, you increase your value in the modern world. Because communication matters everywhere, and people who can communicate globally naturally have more possibilities. Now let's be honest again. Does English guarantee success? No, of course not. But it increases your options, and having more options changes your future. Because sometimes the biggest difference in life is not talent, it's access. Access to information, access to people, access to opportunities. And English creates access. Now imagine this. A few years from now, you're watching old videos of yourself struggling with basic sentences. And suddenly you realize you now understand interviews, podcasts, movies, conversations naturally. You can express yourself. You can connect with people globally. And maybe because of that, your life looks different. Not instantly, not magically, but gradually, through accumulated opportunities. That's how transformation really happens. Now, here's the final idea for this part. Most people think learning English changes only communication, but actually, it changes exposure, and exposure changes identity. Because the more the world opens to you, the more you begin to change with it. There's something about learning English that people rarely talk about. At first, you think you're only learning a language. But slowly, without noticing, you begin changing as a person. Not dramatically, not overnight, but little by little. And the strange part is, it often starts inside your mind before it appears in your life. Because English changes the way you think about yourself. Now, let me explain something very honestly. When people start learning English, many of them feel small. They hesitate. They compare themselves to fluent speakers. They feel embarrassed making mistakes. And because of that, they often create a quiet belief inside their mind. I'm not good enough yet. That belief affects everything. The way they speak, the risks they take, the confidence they carry. But then something starts happening, very slowly. They understand a sentence they couldn't understand before. They watch a video without subtitles. They speak for a few seconds, naturally. And those small moments begin changing their self-image. Because progress changes identity. Now here's something very powerful psychologically. Your brain builds confidence through evidence. Not motivation, not positive quotes. Evidence. So every time you succeed in something small, your brain records it. I understood that. I said that sentence. I communicated successfully. And over time, those small moments build a new identity. Now imagine someone who once said, I can never speak English. And months later, they're having conversations, traveling, creating content, teaching others. What changed? Not just vocabulary, their belief about themselves changed. And once belief changes, behavior changes too. Now let's go deeper. Learning English also teaches patience, because language learning is slow. You cannot force fluency. You build it gradually. And through that process, you learn something important. You learn how to continue without immediate results. That skill becomes useful everywhere in life. Now, here's another hidden transformation. English exposes you to different ways of thinking, different cultures, different personalities, different ideas. And exposure expands the mind. You stop seeing the world from only one perspective. You become more open, more curious, more adaptable. And adaptability is powerful in modern life. Now think about this. Many people stay mentally limited because they only consume one type of information, one language, one environment. But English gives you access to millions of voices, millions of perspectives, and that changes the way you think. Now, here's something even deeper. When you learn English, you also learn how to become comfortable being uncomfortable. At the beginning, everything feels awkward. Pronunciation, speaking, listening, making mistakes. But if you continue anyway, you train resilience. You become someone who can survive confusion and still move forward. That mindset is powerful, far beyond language learning. Now let's make this personal. Maybe right now, you still doubt yourself sometimes. Maybe you still feel behind. But think about who you already are compared to the version of you that started. You already understand more. You already think differently. You already notice things you couldn't notice before. That's growth, even if it feels slow. Now imagine yourself in the future. Your English is stronger. Your confidence is higher. You can communicate more naturally. But the biggest change is not your fluency. It's your mindset. Because now you believe, I can learn difficult things. I can improve consistently. I can grow. And once someone truly believes that, their future changes. Not only in English, in everything. Now here's the key idea. English is not just teaching you words. It's teaching you expansion. Expansion of thought, expansion of confidence, expansion of possibility. And that expansion slowly transforms your life. Now let's bring everything together. At first, you think you're learning a language, but later, you realize you were also rebuilding yourself, becoming more confident, more capable, more connected to the world. And that transformation is much bigger than grammar or vocabulary. Let's talk about the future for a moment, because the world is changing very fast, faster than most people realize. And one of the biggest differences between people in the future will not only be intelligence, it will be communication. The ability to connect with people beyond your own environment, beyond your own country, beyond your own language. And this is where English becomes powerful. Not because English is better than other languages, but because it became a global bridge, a shared language between millions of people who come from completely different places. Now think about what that means. It means opportunities are no longer limited by geography. A person in one country can work with someone in another country, learn from someone on the other side of the world, build friendships, businesses, projects, communities, all through communication. And people who can communicate globally will naturally have more possibilities. Now, here's something important. The future rewards adaptability, not just knowledge, because information is everywhere now. But the ability to communicate, learn, and connect quickly, that's becoming more valuable every year. And English sits at the center of that system. Now let's go deeper. Think about how many industries already depend on English. technology, business, content creation, education, remote work, travel, international communication. Even if you don't plan to work internationally, English still increases your access inside your own country because many opportunities now require connection to the global world. Now here's something very real. Many people feel trapped in limited environments, limited jobs, limited ideas, limited growth. And sometimes, learning English becomes the first step toward expansion. Not because the language magically changes life, but because it changes exposure, and exposure changes direction. Now, imagine someone who learns English consistently for a few years. At first, nothing dramatic happens, but slowly, they start understanding more information, meeting different people, seeing different lifestyles, thinking differently. And over time, their ambitions grow because the world around them becomes bigger. That's the hidden power of English. It changes what feels possible. Now, here's another important idea. The future belongs to people who can keep learning. And English accelerates learning because so much knowledge becomes directly accessible, without waiting for translations, without limitations. And that speed matters. Now, let's make this emotional for a moment. Imagine the version of yourself that exists a few years from now. More confident, more capable, more independent, able to move through the world with less fear, to understand, to communicate, to connect. That version of you is not created in one day. It's built through small daily actions. Listening, speaking, repeating, continuing, even when progress feels slow. Now here's something most people underestimate. Every small English session compounds. It feels tiny today, but over months and years, it becomes transformation. A sentence today, a conversation later, an opportunity later, a completely different future later. That's how growth really works. Quietly, gradually, repeatedly. Now let's talk about confidence again. When you can communicate globally, you stop feeling isolated. You stop feeling limited to one small space. And that changes the way you carry yourself. Because communication creates freedom. Freedom to travel, freedom to learn, freedom to express yourself, freedom to connect with people you would never meet otherwise. And freedom changes identity. Now here's the deeper truth. Learning English is not really about becoming perfect at English. It's about becoming someone who can participate in a larger world. That's the real transformation. Now imagine yourself years from now looking back and realizing that one of the most important decisions you made was continuing to learn English even when it felt difficult. Because that decision slowly changed your direction, your confidence, your opportunities, and maybe even your entire life. There's something very quiet about transformation. Most of the time, it doesn't happen in one big moment. It happens slowly. So slowly that you don't even notice it at first. And learning English is exactly like that. At the beginning, it feels small. One sentence, one word, one listening session, one uncomfortable conversation. And because those moments feel small, many people underestimate them. They think, this won't really change my life. But small things repeated consistently become powerful. Now think about this. Every person who speaks English fluently today was once confused too, slow too, nervous too. There was a time when even basic sentences felt difficult, but they continued, not perfectly, just consistently. And over time, those small efforts accumulated. That's the secret most people miss. Big change is usually hidden inside small, daily actions. Now here's something important. Your future is shaped by what you repeat, not by what you do once. So every time you choose to stay connected to English, even briefly, you are shaping your future, quietly, without realizing it. Now imagine two versions of yourself. The first version stops. They tell themselves, "It's too difficult. I'm too slow. I'll never become fluent." So they quit, and life continues exactly the same. The second version continues, not aggressively, not perfectly, but steadily. Listening sometimes, speaking sometimes, learning little by little. And after a few years, that person becomes completely different. Not because they were special, but because they stayed connected to growth. Now, here's the deeper truth. English is not only changing your opportunities, it's changing your identity. Because every time you overcome confusion, you become more resilient. Every time you speak despite fear, you become more confident. Every time you continue despite slow progress, you become stronger mentally. That growth goes far beyond language. Now, let's be honest. There will still be difficult days. Days where you feel tired. Days where progress feels invisible. Days where you compare yourself to others. That's normal. But those days do not decide your future. Your direction does. And direction is created by repetition. Now here's something powerful. You do not need to become fluent tomorrow. You only need to continue today. That's it. Because fluency is not built in one dramatic moment. It's built through thousands of tiny moments, tiny repetitions, tiny decisions, tiny returns after difficult days. And one day, you suddenly realize something. You're understanding naturally. You're speaking more freely. You're thinking differently. You're more confident than before. And that transformation feels almost unreal because it happened gradually. Now let's connect this to life itself. Many opportunities in the future will belong to people who can communicate, adapt, learn continuously, and connect globally. And English helps build all of those things, not instantly, but steadily. Now imagine yourself years from now, maybe traveling, maybe working online, maybe building something meaningful, maybe simply feeling more confident in the world. And then imagine looking back at this version of yourself right now, the version still learning, still trying, still repeating simple sentences, and realizing this is where everything started. That's powerful. Now let me leave you with something simple. Never underestimate small progress, because small progress repeated long enough becomes transformation. So keep listening, keep speaking, keep continuing, even slowly, because your future is not changed by one perfect moment. It's changed by small actions repeated consistently over time. And maybe, one day, you'll realize that learning English didn't only give you a new language, it gave you a completely new version of yourself.